Right here. Okay, let's do a little review of the last 3 principles that y'all learned. And please be a little bit more vocal than yesterday. Come on, work with me here. What was the first principle? And the question that we asked is? Okay, principle number 2. Yeah, what's it called? Inside game, and the question is, what motivates me? And then principle 3 was just this morning, which is what? You guys are so smart. What was the question? How do I grow? Okay, so we're going to do principle 4, but I first want y'all to watch this video. Break to build. So principle 4 is called hurting for certain. And so in that video, we see dudes breaking down their muscles, working out, putting in work, getting practice in. Because we break down our muscles with the idea that we build them back up and we get stronger and better in our sport. And so that with hurting for certain, we're asking the question, how do I deal with suffering? That we're broken down in life, but that God builds us back up and that we're stronger in Him through our suffering. So how do I deal with suffering in my own life and in the life of others? And so we're going to look through, y'all had to read a lot. Was that the wrong thing to read? Did you have to read the whole thing? The whole thing? Yeah, so that's a lot. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this man Joseph's life like quick because we ain't got time for all that. So the first thing what happened to Joseph is he has a dream. And he's like, brothers, I had this dream that I would rule over you one day. And then his brothers are like, you're a brat. We're jealous of you. So they throw him in a pit, right? Y'all remember this? They throw him in a pit. And then some people come by and they're like, hey, we could just sell our boy off into slavery. Dad will never know. We'll just tell him he died. It's all good. So they sell him into slavery. Are you guys like tracking? You're remembering this as you read it? Just want to make sure we read the same stuff. And then whose house does he end up in? Potiphar. So he ends up in Potiphar's house. And then Potiphar's wife, she's so ratchet. Potiphar's wife is like, yo, Joseph, you're kind of fly though. Let me get it in, right? She's so ratchet. But what does Joseph say? Joseph's like, no. Tell the girl trying to twerk it on me, wait, no. No. So he gets her off. He's like, no. So y'all know I like to say that she's so salty. So then she's like, okay, I'm about to snitch on you. So she goes and lies on our boy. And she tells Potiphar that he raped her or tried to rape her. So then what happens? He gets thrown in jail. So he's in jail, which it's looking all real bad for him right now. But he ends up interpreting some dreams, right? For Pharaoh. So then Pharaoh brings him up, puts him in command and leadership. So he's like second command in the whole kingdom. He's over all of grain. And then a famine hits the land. So then who shows up on the scene? His brothers, the ones that sold it out anyway. So they show up because there's a famine, they have no food. So they come to him, trying to get food. They don't even recognize him. And then he reveals himself and says, hey brothers, it's me. And they're like, whoa, because he could punish them, but he doesn't, right? He embraces them, he loves them, he gives them the he brings them into the kingdom. So it's this heck of bad story that looks all bad for Joseph, but ends out like really awesome of what God did through it. And so, as we look at Joseph's life as our backdrop for this principle, what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about three things, and they're in your notes, but we're going to look at the reality, the response, and the redemption. And so, we got to start in the beginning. But so, Roman numeral 1 in your notes is what is the reality? And the reality is that life outside the garden is broken, and it inevitably involves suffering. So what do we mean when we say suffering? So we have some definitions up here, but suffering is the pain that you experience as a result of a trial. And then pain is something you feel that hurts. And then trial is something circumstantially difficult that happens to you. So trials come in many, many different forms. So they come, you have something circumstantially difficult that happens, and then you feel pain. And this could be physical pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, but you feel some sort of pain. And then the pain that you're experiencing is as a result of your trial is suffering. And that's what we're talking about today, is suffering. So suffering is tied to life outside of the garden. Y'all remember Rez's talk Sunday night about the fall and the garden and how God intended for it to be at first. Suffering is a result of the fall, of sin entering our lives and entering the world. It's a part of our broken relationship with God. But do you guys remember in that story, in the fall, there was something there that tempted Adam and Eve? What was it? It was a snake, a serpent. So we need to start a little bit, we're going to start there, and start with who is actually the architect of suffering. So we're going to talk about Satan, which is in your notes. Satan is the author of brokenness and suffering. So Satan is God's enemy, and he continues to stand against everything good and everything that God would bless his people with. Satan is against God, and he's against God's people. He has limited power, but his influence is great. So when Christ went to the cross and died and rose again, Satan was defeated. Like, it was done. Boom, you're out. Kick you in the face. You're out the game, you know? But God is allowing Satan to have influence in our lives and influence in the world for a period of time. He'll put a stop to that one day, the Bible says, but for a period of time, he's allowing his influence. It also says that Satan's mission is to steal, kill, and destroy. So if you write, don't look it up right now, but John 10:10, the thief comes to only kill, steal, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So Satan's goal is that you would be destroyed and that you would doubt the abundant life in Christ. That's what he wants to do. He wants to destroy you, and you would doubt what the abundant life with Jesus really is. And also a verse worth mentioning is 1 Peter 5:8. Y'all can write it down and look at it later, but it says that the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. So it's all bad. It's not looking good. Satan is not about you. He hates you. He wants to destroy you. However, he shouldn't be used as an excuse for your own poor choices. And y'all can probably think of what we mean by this. But one example that I think of really clearly is I came into college with, I told y'all I'm Polynesian. I came in with 3 other Polynesian dudes. So we were like 4 Polynesians in the whole athletic department. So, we stick together. We're kind of tight. So all 3 of these dudes ended up getting kicked out of school early. So I was the only one that graduated. It's all good, whatever. But one of the dudes, the last one I kicked out was my boy. He got kicked off the football team because he got one too many positive drug tests. Okay? So we're talking, he's like super broken because he just got kicked off. But he's had like 17 chances, you know what I'm saying? Like 17 positive drug tests is a little bit crazy. We need to get under control. So we're talking, and he's like, yeah, man, he's so sad. And he's like, I know, and I'm trying to encourage him. And he's like, the devil's just out to get me, bro. And I'm like, well, actually, boo-boo, you actually were the one smoking the weed, not the devil. You know what I'm saying? So it's not, we have to take responsibility for our bad choices, right? Satan's out for our demise, but we have to take responsibility for our bad choices. And so the other reality we need to look at about suffering is that suffering is complex. and it comes at us from many different directions. And this is pretty self-explanatory, but suffering can come into our lives as a result of our own personal choices. This would be things like what I just said, positive drug tests, or if you maybe, have been dating a dude and decided to start having sex with him and you got pregnant, right? Personal choice is a result of your own personal choices. It also can come from others' choices. So it can be suffering that is a result of others' decisions. So coaches' behavior towards you, parents divorcing, friends' betrayal, or boyfriend-girlfriend betrayal, right? So there's suffering that comes on us as a result of other people's choices. And then thirdly, there's suffering that comes as a result of different circumstances that aren't directly related to a choice at all. So this is things like injuries, people getting really sick, or accidents, things that we just can't control. Right, so Satan is the author of brokenness and suffering, and it comes at us in different directions. But here, this is in your notes, I believe. The challenge is not simply to avoid or manage suffering, but to lean into God when we encounter it. I think your notes say, but is to understand it differently when we encounter it. I caught that earlier, sorry. But both, understand it differently and then lean to God when we encounter it. John 16:33, well, I also want to write that verse down, but it says, in this life you will have trouble. It's guaranteed you will have trouble. But it says, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. So Jesus is like, I guarantee you part of your journey in your life is going to be trouble and trials and circumstances and suffering. But I've overcome the world, so surely I've got you in the middle of your trials, in the middle of suffering. So we've got basically two options when we encounter suffering in our lives. And one is we can move towards God by faith and press into Him in our suffering. Or two, which we've seen people choose this, I've chosen it before, we can move away from God in any number of ways to cope with suffering. But so for me to choose God, for you to choose God in the fire, and not be like, I'm out, God, I'm not messing with you, we need to know and be reminded of some things about who He is. So let's look at Roman numeral 2. And talk about our response to suffering. And so trusting God's sovereignty is the best response to suffering. Trusting God's sovereignty is the best response. So what do I mean when I say sovereignty? The definition will be up here, but it means to reign or rule over all. And so in this case, it just means that God has control of everything that's happening in the world, and He has control over everything that's happening in my life. And nothing happens to me that doesn't pass through His hands first. Nothing. And since He's sovereign over everything and everything that happens into my life, then it leads me to some other fundamental truths about God. And so we're going to go to A. God's love and power anchor His followers even in the face of suffering. I thought of, when I read this, I said, well, I went to, one of my teammates in college was from Florida. She grew up in the Keys. So we went to go visit her on a spring break. So I flew into Miami, and we're like driving around, whatever we were doing. Probably, I don't know, going out sometimes, going to the beach. But I saw in the water, like there would be boats in the water that weren't like in California, like Marina Del Rey, it's like UCLA. The boats are like docked, at the dock, like they're like tied up to like a thing that sits in the water, So in Florida, I was confused because I was like, why are the boats just chilling like in the middle of the water? Like I really don't understand what's happening right now. It looks a little bit weird to me. So I asked her, and I was like, why are your boats like parked in the middle of nothing, just chilling in the water? She's like, Emma, we get hurricanes in Florida. And I was like, okay. And what? So she's like, we anchor our boats deep in the water because if we tie them to the dock and a hurricane comes, you're going to come out to your boat and have nothing but splinters the next day. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. We don't have hurricanes in California. But I began to think, as we talk about that, we're anchored in God's love and power, right? That's kind of like our lives. When the hurricanes of life come, if I'm tied to the dock, right, I'm tied to the world, I'm tied to what I think is comfortable, the hurricanes are going to come and my life is about to be shattered, absolutely shattered. But if I anchor my life into the deep water, into the power and the love of God, the hurricanes will come. And I'm going to get a little wet, right? Get a little rocky. But I'm not gonna be shattered because I'm anchored to the hope of Jesus. Does that make sense? Y'all feeling that? You understand? Rolling with me. Just making sure you're awake. Okay. So let's go to the next point. God promises to bring about good in every circumstance for those who love him. And this is a verse, we've talked about it earlier this week. I don't remember what day, but Romans 8:28 says what? And in all things, we know. Anyone know it? That God works out everything for the good of? Yes. So God, we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so when we say in all things, all means all. So we know that God is working for the good in every circumstance for those who love him and who are called according to his purpose. The second point is that God doesn't always allow us to understand why we suffer or how it's going to work out. I think of in 2010, when I lived in East Lansing, go green, go white. I was working at Michigan State. I fell down a flight of stairs in the middle of the night. Don't even ask me how. And I surfed downstairs on my left knee, and I ruptured my patella tendon. I have a really cute little zipper scar right here, if you guys care to look at it. But I went to the ER in the middle of the night, and the doctors were like, we need to give you a breathalyzer. And I'm like, I wasn't drinking. I know it's 3 a.m. and I broke my knee, but I promise I wasn't drinking. But that was post-college. That happened to me. That was like the most serious injury I've had, and I wasn't even playing basketball. But so for me, in that trial, I had to be straight-legged and non-weight bearing for 2 months. I mean, it was a hot mess, and I had never been injured. But I knew why. My word for that year was surrender, and I literally had to surrender. God was teaching me about leading in brokenness and neediness and inadequacy, and people had to bring my dinner, and I'm crutching everywhere, and I couldn't do ministry on campus, and people had to come to my house because I was immobile. It was miserable. I cried a lot because I was like, this is stupid. I just want my independence. But God was teaching me about surrender in a really real way for the next 6 months of my life that year. And so I understood why that trial happened. But we don't always get the luxury of that, right? So right before I came out here, about 2 days before I flew to Colorado, I left my house, and my roommate shot me a text. It was like I was 10 minutes out. And she said, I found out this morning that my dad died. And I said, I'm coming home. I'm turning around. So I turned around. I forgot about everything I was going to do. And I rushed home. And I walked in the house. And I just held her and I wept with her because her dad just died. But what was really, really hard about that was we had been believing for her dad's salvation because her dad wasn't a Christian. And so she said, Emma, I can't fathom that I'll never see him again. I won't even see him in eternity because he didn't know Jesus. And we have been trusting God and praying, and she just, the burden for her to be a part of his salvation story, and guess what? He didn't wake up, and she won't see him again. And we don't know why that happened. You know, all I'm thinking is, Lord, why? Why don't you just give him a chance to say yes to you one more time? Give my roommate a chance to share the gospel and why did that have to happen now? And so sometimes we don't get to understand why suffering will work out. Maybe we won't know for years. Maybe we won't even know until the other side when we're in heaven with the Lord. But Joseph was given a glimpse into his future, right, with his dream and stuff. But he had to wait 13 years before any of it came to fruition. He went through 13 years of probably being like, Lord, you just abandoned me. Where are you? Before anything happened where he could see, oh, you were here the whole time. You had a plan in my suffering. So then the next point is God knows what he's doing even when we don't. And the verse that we have down for this is Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, which says, for your thoughts are not my thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. And so for us, it's good to remember that God is God, and I'm not. And even when I don't understand what he's doing and it doesn't make sense to me and I think it should be going differently, that doesn't mean that God should change it. Because I have the little, this view of this little box of my life, and God has the 50,000-foot view over my whole life and how he's working out things for my good. But I can't see it from this level, so I have to trust God. And I have to let him be God in my life. So let's go to B and talk about how we respond to suffering reveals our trust in God's promises. So when the crap hits the fan in our lives, and it's going to reveal how much I trust in God's promises, right? It's easy for me to trust God when everything is good, but when everything goes bad, can I still choose to trust God and who he is in my life? And so here are some choices that we typically have to face in the midst of suffering. We have a choice that we can get bitter or better. And this is a little bit of a lighter illustration, but this is real. I'm keeping it real with y'all. So sometimes I love to be single. I love it. I love how I get to do ministry. I love that I get to go where I want, what I want. And then sometimes I'm like, I'm sick of being single. I'm off this. Can I just get married and, I don't know, just, life with a husband? So then I start to get a little bit bitter. And then in my bitterness, this is maybe off. Or is it not? I'm not sure. Oh, we're good? Okay. So in my bitterness, I'm like, well, bump this God. If you're not going to bring it, I'm just going to go to the club and go find your ratchet and marry him. Can we just keep it real, though? Right? Because I can go to the club and I can go find me a ratchet dude, and he maybe doesn't love Jesus, and maybe doesn't want to live on mission, but I sure can get a husband there. Can my single girls relate a little bit? So, okay, when I start to let myself go there, when I start to let myself go bitter, that's what I think. And you guys think I'm kidding, but I literally, once a month, be like, tell me not to go to the club and go get me a dude. Like, I'm on the phone with my friends, like, accountability, let's go. Andrew knows. I'm just kidding. But when I choose to say, Lord, I don't want to be bitter about that. I want to be better. Then I start to think, God, what is it that you want to teach me through singleness? How do you want me to experience you and intimacy in my singleness? What do you want to teach me about waiting and being patient and going after the kingdom of God and going after the mission while I get to do it the way I do, without a husband, without kids, and all that? So I can choose bitter or I can choose better. And I can choose pressing into God and trusting him in that. The other choice we have to wrestle with is, wrong page, is I can choose to take revenge or I can release. And so Joseph, he's a great example of this. This is a great text for this because what did Joseph do at the end, right? He was elevated to leadership. He was boss over all the grain in a famine. And so his brothers, who did him so dirty, y'all, so dirty, come up and they're like, we need food. And he, for sure, could have been like, I'm boss dog right now. You guys did me dirty. I'm like, kill them and send them, whatever, bury them in the Nile River, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, he could have so chose to take revenge on his brothers for what they did to him. But he chose to say, no, it's me, I forgive you guys, I love you. And he brought them into his home and he made them royalty with him. He forgave them. He released it and let it go. He didn't choose revenge. And there's a verse, it's Romans 12:19. But it says, beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, says the Lord. So revenge is never our deal. We don't ever get to choose revenge. That's on God, right? God gets to repay. We don't. We get to let it go, release it, and pray for the people we've been hurt by. And then the last choice we tend to have to make when we're suffering, you want to know a lot about this one, is medicate. I can medicate or I can meditate. Okay, so in college, so I dated my first boyfriend, my first love, everything, for 6 years. So So we dated from high school into college. And I don't even know if any of y'all have been in that long relationship, besides married people. But, so it was long. So by the time we were in college and that thing ended, like for real ended, like it was over, I was so broken and so sad and so empty. And so all I wanted to do was medicate. And I really just wanted to medicate with my 4 favorite men: Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, Jose Cuervo, and Captain Morgan. You know what I'm saying? That's really what I wanted. I was like, I need to medicate with alcohol. I've seen a lot of my teammates, me even in some seasons, right? What do we medicate with? We medicate with sex. We meditate with food, with addiction. We medicate with just trying to talk to as many girls or guys as we can, right? Like if people really like me and I got like people trying to come after me, then I feel, it's like feeling the emptiness that I feel, right? So we can choose to medicate or we can choose to meditate. And so after I got over the issues of not trying to drink myself into like death, with my 4 favorite dudes, I would, like, honestly, after that breakup, I cried myself to sleep for about 6 months. No lie. Real talk. So it got to the point where I would be in my bed, and I would wake up, and I was so sad. I would wake up and feel so broken. I don't know if any of you are in a place like that right now, where you wake up, and there's just emptiness, and you're so broken, and you're so empty, and you have to feel it. You have to feel the emptiness with something. And so instead of feeling it with Jose, you know what I'm saying, or Jim, or all those guys, I would pull my Bible off my shelf, and I would open it, and I didn't care what I was reading. I would just read, because I was like, I have to fill my emptiness with something. And I was like, I'm filling it with the Word of God. I'm filling it with the Word of God. But why is that making me cry right now? It's, bringing up old memories. I'm going to get it together. But that's what it's like. I could choose to medicate, or I could choose to meditate, where I'm just digging into God's Word. And this would happen like 4 nights a week. I would wake up and feel so empty that I would grab my Bible, I'd just open it, and I'd read, because I'd be like, I have to fill this pain with something. And so I'd fill it with the Word of God. And so as we're going through suffering, and as we're in some hard junk in our lives, are we going to choose to meditate before God and let God fill us with what He wants to fill us with? To Him to fill our emptiness and love us when we're so desperate for it. So down here is that trusting God in the midst of suffering, this is in your notes, is a continual process that begins today and continues for the rest of your earthly lives. Because you don't just wake up, y'all, and this is your thing. You're like, woo, I trust God, yeah, I'm good. And you don't just listen to a 45-minute talk and get this, and all of a sudden you trust God in your trials. This is going to be a constant process that happens over and over again for the rest of your entire lives, is learning to trust God in your circumstances and in suffering. Okay, so finally, let's go to Roman numeral 3. And we're going to get to redemption. And this is a big part of suffering. And so redemption is that God will redeem our suffering for our good and His glory. And if you've never heard about that word redeem, the definition is to take something broken and through payment make it whole again. And so what we talk about a lot with redemption is the gospel. It's this fancy theological concept, but basically that Jesus' blood on the cross functioned as payment to buy us back because we were separated from God. And so though He's redeemed our lives, He didn't just wipe out all of suffering. He will one day, but He didn't just right away. And so He promises that there'll be a day when He does that. But until then, He's in the business of redeeming or buying back our temporary suffering. And so you're like, well, how does He do that? How does this happen? And so suffering is a refining process that can produce growth in our lives. Because God wastes nothing. He wastes no tears. He wastes no pain. Everything in your lives He uses for a purpose. And He uses to grow us in a number of ways. And that might be hard to hear for people who are suffering. Because you're like, I'm done. I can't even really live my day-to-day life. But God has a purpose for it. And so it's hard to wait on that. but it will reveal character. So we're kind of like tubes of toothpaste. When you squeeze it, what's inside is going to come out. And so as you squeeze us and we get into the fires, it's going to reveal what's in our character. Because, like I said earlier, but when life is good and grand and gravy, it's easy to trust God and love people well and praise God. But when life is a hot mess, it's not that easy. It's not that easy to love people and trust God. And so it's going to reveal our character. The other thing is that it can bring about Christ-likeness and maturity. And there's a word I want you guys to write under that, and the word is sanctification. And this word's important because this is just another fancy-ish theological word, but it just means to be set apart and to be made more like Christ. And so we're going to go back real quick to Romans 8:28, but we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. But I also want you to write down under that Romans 8:29, which is the verse right after that. Because the verse, well, in our trials, right, when we're like, well, God works for the good of all things. You're like, this can't be good. This sucks. My life sucks. This circumstance cannot be good. So what do you mean God works for the good of all things? Right? What are you talking about? So what we have to think about is, okay, well, what is good to God? Let's think to know what is good to God. And so Romans 8:29, right after that verse, says, and for those who he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed into the image of his Son. And so what does that mean? Is that it's good to God that you would look more like Jesus. It's good to God that you would be conformed into the image of his Son. And so when we're like, this is not good, God, you are tripping. It's good to God that you would look like Jesus. And there is a process that you're going through for that to happen, and it's called sanctification. Okay? This third is that it can strengthen our faith for the next challenge. And I don't know who I was talking to today. Maybe it was Victor. I don't know. It was like, I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. Victor, was it you?
Yeah.
Sounds like a Victor. I should think that. Okay. But I said that kidding, but in reality, that's real. So all of us are either in a trial, coming out of one, or we're about to go into the next one. And so suffering's going to inevitably be there. And so suffering strengthens us so that we stay ready for the next challenge that's coming. Because you better believe it's coming because God loves you and is trying to change us. Okay, so not only do we grow personally in suffering, but we also put God on display through our suffering. So be in your notes, God's greatness is reflected. When we trust God in the midst of our suffering, God's strength and power get revealed in our lives. We hold up the name of the Lord and his strength, and that's what people see. Right? They see that when we're persevering through our suffering. And not that we always do it good, right? You have those days where it's like, I don't even care about God, baby. Because this thing is just so hard. But when we choose to do it, when we choose to persevere and trust God, we hold up the name of Jesus. Okay? So God uses the suffering and details of our individual lives to bring about his ultimate aims in history. And so for us, we think of our lives and our situations and our individual stories. And those are really important because God cares about our individual stories. But our individual story is a part of God's overall huge story when he is redeeming the whole world and all of humanity and bringing them all back to himself. And so we get to be a part of God's huge story, not just our individual lives. And there'll come a day, suffering's going to end. That's part of God's ultimate aim, is that he's going to come back and suffering will end for good. And the second is that God transforms the sin and suffering of our individual lives into something something beautiful in his perfect timing. And so we saw this in Joseph's life. What do we see about Joseph's life? 50:20, like one of the last verses, what does he say? He tells his brothers, what you meant for harm, God meant for what?
Good.
God meant for good. And so Joseph has been elevated to a position of leadership after going through all these with Potiphar, and Potiphar's wretched wife, and all that. And now he's saving Egypt from a famine, saving his brothers. And it's because God had a plan, and God is making something beautiful out of a sucky story, out of a horrible story. But God's making something beautiful, and there was purpose for it. And so here's my favorite part, and this is in your notes, but I love this because this is what it's all about, y'all, is that God uses the greatest suffering of all, the cross, to bring about the greatest good for all of humanity, which is the redemption of all things. And so Christ held nothing back. He held nothing back. He gave everything. He gave his life so that we could be in a relationship with God. And so why do we think that he would hold back anything more so that we can become more like him? Because he loves us so much that he's not going to let us remain as we are. And he's redeeming all of our suffering individually and for the good of all of humanity. Christ, he's not going to hold anything back because he loves us. He's going to make us more like him. And so there is this picture, which, if you know me, this is so ironic because I freaking hate bugs. And so, at least, but I do like color, and these bugs are nice and bright. So, one of my favorite devotionals this season of life is a devotional called Streams in the Desert. And I was reading one of the devotionals, and it was talking about this dude who had this is an emperor moth. I don't know, but it's a bug. I don't know what bugs. But an emperor moth. So he had a cocoon with an emperor moth in it, and he was so enthralled by watching this emperor moth in the cocoon and couldn't wait to see it come out because they're beautiful. If you like bugs, I guess you think they're beautiful. And so he was waiting for this emperor moth to come out. And so he's finally watching, and he sees, obviously, the cocoon, the moth starting to struggle, it's starting to come out. And he's for hours watching, and then he leaves, comes back in the afternoon, and it's still struggling. It hasn't even come out. He's like, what the dealio? It's stuck. Right? So he thinks the moth is stuck in its cocoon. And so he's so tempted. He's like, I could just help it out. I can just help this thing come out. It's on the struggle bus. It can't get out that little hole. So he takes scissors and he snips. Where's my picture at? But he snips, just kidding. He snips that little hole on the cocoon. And of course, now it's all easy. It's all gravy, baby. The moth just, comes right out. And he's like, cool. But the moth comes out and he sees that it's this super inflamed, swollen body, and it has little shriveled wings, and it hadn't developed its wings. Because in actuality, the friction and the pressure of the moth struggling to come out of the cocoon is what develops the wings of that dang bug. And he didn't know that. And this brother just clipped it open so the moth could come out. But now that moth, in its very short lifetime, is going to spend it's crippled, and it's going to spend its few hours crawling and walking around when it should be flying with these beautiful bright yellow and orange wings, right? And so in this devotional, it said this at the end of that, when it talks about that guy. And it's on here, but it says, the far-sighted, perfect love that seeks the perfection of its object does not weakly shrink from present transient suffering. Our Father's love is too true to be weak. Because he loves his children, he allows suffering, they may be partakers of his holiness. With this glorious end of view, he spares not for their crime. Made perfect through sufferings, the sons and daughters of God are trained up to obedience and brought to glory through much tribulation. And I love that line that our Father's love is too true to be weak. Because he spares not for our suffering, for our tears, because there's a purpose in it. And I think when we're suffering, we're like, Lord, just cut the dang cocoon open. Give me some reprieve from what I'm experiencing. I'm dying here. I can't do this. I am suffering, Lord. Just let me out. Like the dang moth. Let me out. But he will cripple us. And he knows that he will cripple us from becoming like him. Right? Because we are going to be partakers of his holiness. And this glorious end in view, he spares not our crime, because we're made perfect through our sufferings. And so it's God's love that stays with us as we're suffering, because he has a greater purpose for us, to lean back on him. And so hopefully our prayer is more like, Lord, if this is what it takes to be made like you, holy and righteous and tried and true, don't cut me short. Don't cut me short. Don't let me take the shortcut out. Because I want you, and I want all of you, and I want to be like you. So may I endure suffering, choosing joy and pressing into your presence as I trust you and your perfect plan and your perfect timing.